Hello, everyone. Welcome to DNA's October webinar, Why the Best Campaigns Let Others Do the Talking. We are a marketing agency that focuses on investor acquisition, user acquisition. Once capital goals are reached, we utilize regulated investment crowdfunding across a large majority of our deals, have worked on over 400 of these types of initiatives that have collectively produced 9 figures of capital. We like to share what we see work and not work in the space, and social proof, third-party validation, having others do the talking is what the focus of our conversations are here today. Joined by Mark, our lead editor, content aficionado here at DNA. Mark is a key member of our team, and you should see him in action on our whiteboard discussions. You're going to get a glimpse of it here today. Mark, can we share a bit about your story, your background, and what you do here at DNA to the audience before we dive into today's deck, today's presentation?
Sure, yeah. I have a bit of an eclectic background, ranging from some legal work to, for a long time, I worked managing the production of and editing of study guides and lesson plans for kiddos at a website called bookrags.com. Spent a long time just raising my kiddos, and now I'm here with DNA, and I'm very happy to be here. And my work is I'm sort of the editor at large here at DNA. I'm bouncing around from piece to piece, product to product. I have a little hand in just about everything. And I'm always looking at our content, looking at our graphics, and making whatever changes I see fit or giving suggestions. And yeah, love the work, love the people. It's great stuff.
Mark, why do you like working with startups to mid-market businesses? What excites you about raising capital versus
Yeah.
other types of branding, e-commerce, app installs, B2B marketing? There's a lot of other stuff to do out there. Why capital raising?
Yeah. Well, every one of our clients has this in common, among a few things, I guess. They all have dreams, and it is so exciting to be at this foundational state in watching, their dreams come to life. And every time it's something different, it's something new, and you meet new people who are just tremendously excited and animated by these ideas that they have, and just seeing them come to life like that is just an extraordinary experience that I just recommend to anybody. It's just very tremendously exciting, just really fulfilling. If you're going to work in marketing, I think this is one of the most energized spaces that you can find.
I love that. We have that in common. And I find if I could understand why someone does something, there's a much quicker path toward relatedness. My listening's different. So thanks for starting things out with that. Uh, have our headshots, our titles there. If you haven't seen our webinars before, uh, you should also check out my podcast, Test, Optimize, and Scale. Over 175 episodes. Also, just had a chance to speak at the CFPA in DC, the conference. Had meetings with the SEC, spoke with FINRA, Senate Finance Committee. Look, I'm throwing social proof out there to start the discussion, but a lot of other great content out there. Like to be an open book of in terms of what we see driving performance in the space, because I believe there's a lot of misconceptions out there. We want to see a higher success rate industry wide. Going to go over some more of those stats momentarily, but just to provide the overview, to pull you in, not to have you feel like you got it after hearing this blurb, exploring the importance of third party validation to increase credibility and engagement in equity crowdfunding. People do not believe what they see on the internet. I like saying it like that. It feels like a web 1.0 90s type of, saying, but it's true. I was brought up in an era where you didn't put your name on the internet. There was a lot of distrust. We did not believe claims that were made in the media, maybe less today, actually, now that I think about it. But you get the idea. Just because something's online does not make it trustworthy. And to invest into a company that you perhaps have never heard of, which is who many of our clients want to see invest in their deals, new investors, you really need to see a lot in terms of credibility to feel comfortable enough to buy shares in this organization. And this deal may sit in the high risk, high return section of your portfolio, meaning you may expect a very small percentage of these types of investments to mature into any type of return. So being able to have that confidence on the other side is a big deal, and a step that's often overlooked by many of the issuers, the companies issuing shares out there. Mark, anything to add to set the stage here before we dive in further?
Yeah. I mean, the topic we're going to talk about, third party validation, it's the reason why it's so important. We use the word credibility, but we could also use the word trust. And trust is just absolutely positively necessary to build between you and your prospective investors. They don't know you, they don't know your business a lot of the time. They need to believe that this is a, reliable, trustworthy person. They need to see validation from others. They need to hear about your successes. And that in turn will give them a chance to believe in you before they've even gotten to what you're doing, to what your business is all about. They need to believe that it's real, and that because they need that security, because this is money we're talking about here. This is real money that they're investing, and they don't want to feel like they're just throwing it down a hole. They need to feel okay, the same way that they do when they click on something in like Robinhood or something like that to invest in a share in Nvidia. They never think like, well, is Nvidia really, is it a real serious company? Are they, really going to be working hard to dominate the, graphical card space? They never ask themselves that question. They just look at the valuation of the deal. And that's where we want to get them to. But we can't even get them there if they don't trust you.
I love how you brought up NVIDIA. I mean, what a great example. I know people who've bought shares in NVIDIA and can't explain to me what they do. Just on a quick Google search,
Yep.
ditch AMD and just go with the pure play NVIDIA. You could see so many different recommendations on why to invest in NVIDIA that the moment you look at them. And it's really social dynamics at play with these campaigns. They are crowd sales. If you've tuned into any of our webinars in the past, you've probably heard me say something along the lines of, you want to have a line around the block, not an empty restaurant sensation. And, gonna talk about that further. But what does it mean if no one is talking about your campaign? I think that is the empty restaurant. I think that's the empty pool at a pool party. I think that's, any number of different visuals that you could, picture with social proof, without social proof. Without social proof, yeah, maybe I'll go in there to be by myself. If I'm a large investor, I want to close out a round, but that's not the purpose of regulated investment crowdfunding. It's based on a crowd. Social proof, hey, that looks cool. I don't even know where that is. Almost looks like Venice, Italy. Uh, Judging by the beams here in Venice, California, but been out that way. And that there seems to be a lot going on there. I actually don't like the lady on her phone. That feels engaging to me. But you could see people having conversations. It looks inviting. There's a few extra seats available at the table. What do we have going on here? And how does this represent what we see in digital campaigns, Mark?
Yeah. I mean, well, first, let me emphasize like, it's not merely the lack of sending a message when we're talking about nobody's talking about you. It's not that they're not getting the messages that they would be getting if people were talking. There being any kind of total lack of buzz is itself a message.
Hmm. Mhm.
They're not being any like interest anywhere on the internet, between their friends or anything like that. That is themselves sending them a message, and the message is probably stay away. Um,
Yes.
People feel safer when they see groups of people engaging in the thing that they want to engage in. You know, you might look at like a ski lift and think, I don't know, it looks kind of rickety or whatever. But then you see like, a huge crowd of people just using it over and over. You're like, oh, okay, it's probably fine. Even if it looks the exact same, that crowd has sent you information and you're just assuming, well, they must know something, right?
Yep.
And that's what it comes down to. If you're looking for like one sentence, it's you look at the crowd and you feel safe, you feel reassured, you think they must know something. And that in turn gives you the confidence you need to investigate and potentially to invest.
Mark, if you're trying to relate the material to me, you just scored with that chairlift analogy. If I go to Mammoth here in California, uh, generally a top 10 resort based on snowfall in any given season, uh, on a powder day, a day after a storm, when you're looking to get to chairlifts that are opening periodically throughout the day once they've been able to do snow removal, you'll see lines build up before the chair opens. And it's exactly as you're saying, they know something. They know this chair is about to open. Sometimes they're wrong and you wait for an hour or two. Other times, within 5 minutes, you're on that lift and getting a fresh track all the way down. So landing with me there, and it's true. I see it. I see it reflected in the analytics that are produced from there. This is more than just optics. It's built on that. I write for the Forbes Agency Council, and I've put out articles on Forbes, a top domain authority website with under 1,000 views. I've then published articles with over 40,000 views, and others around there. When I put my marketing hat on and try to understand why from a data science perspective, I've found some of those articles have been reposted over 100 times by people I don't even know directly. I'm a fan of. I'm glad that they're finding value in the content and reposting. But Twitter X, their blogs, different sections of their content funnel are pointing to recommendations in those articles, which means not only is it we're going to call it Venice-esque restaurant that we see here, it's producing far more traffic, far more eyeballs, far more consumers of that content. You want more consumers of your shares, your investments. And that's really what we're looking to point out here. Uh, the KPI, the key performance indicator for these restaurants, is likely revenue, right? I mean, could break down profit and other metrics, but you can guess the revenue that the black and white photo that location is going to showcase is going to be much different than the one at the bottom, and the same is very true for these regulated investment crowdfunding deals that we see online. What do you think about self-promotion, Mark? What if I sit here and just talk about how great we are in our case studies for an hour versus, pointing at case studies, pointing at client testimonials, pointing at education, which demonstrates how we work on these campaigns? What do you think about self-promotion, which is still important? It's still a very good thing to represent yourself in a positive manner. But what are your outlooks towards self-promoting?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd say self-promotion is necessary, but not sufficient. um they do need to believe, of course, that you believe in your business, that you believe in what you're selling. They need to see you say it and hear you. But at the same time, everyone's going to do that, right? I mean, of course they are. It's their businesses. By definition, they believe in the things that they're doing. um Someone else, a third party, saying those exact same words about your business everything changes everything, because that third party, at least to their knowledge, isn't beholden to you, right? I mean, they have no reason to think that they're on your payroll or something like that. And so they have no reason to say this if they don't believe it. And when you hear that they believe in you, when you hear that this third party believes in you, your assumption is they've done investigatory work. you
Hmm.
know Maybe they've worked with you before, maybe they've bought your product, maybe they've used your service, right? And so you're taking all this information from their testimonial, from their advocacy, you know so that's why it's so valuable. I mean, it's assumed you're going to self promote. Of course, everyone's going to self promote, talk about how great they are. But the difference between me saying Mark Laufgraben is a fantastic editor versus, like, Jeff Bezos saying Mark Laufgraben is a fantastic editor, the words are the same, right? But I think we're going to find that there is a difference in the way those words are perceived. And that, in a nutshell, is why advocacy is so important.
For the record, we think you're great, whether Jeff Bezos says so or not.
Thank you.
But it's true. Reputable endorsements add significant value. Amplifying a campaign's reach and credibility directly, and endorsements from respected figures can convey a level of credibility and trust that is challenging to achieve through self promotion alone. So, as an issuer, you absolutely want to be utilizing your own content distribution channels, developing, nurturing your own community across social media, across your email channels, and your long form content channels. You should be hosting webinars such as this, creating articles showing that thought leadership and in a longer form format. The update section of your offering page and to the followers there, it should feel like you are a moving ship. You're going to your destination with or without them. This is their opportunity to hop on board. And as a media publisher, you're more likely to want to cover that issuer and want to promote that issuer to your audience if you could see they have that type of cohort behind what they're doing, building, thriving. Uh, my podcast, if I'm looking at guests and they have their own podcast, I'm far more likely to have them on. If they have their own content channels, their own audience, it speaks to me. So there's something to be said about self promotion. It does not mean don't do it. It just means as you have established channels and a consistent content uh, calendar that's being distributed according to plan, and getting its own engagements, you want to look for others to start saying the same things. And it's true. If I say DNA is the best marketing agency in the investment crowdfunding space, it doesn't mean that much. There's different ways to phrase it where even if we're not, it's acceptable. Uh, but when I hear people say it on my panel at, conferences, including the one last week, which is not prompted, I'm not asking anyone to do that. When I hear referral partners say that in an introduction, it makes me very, fulfilled because I can imagine them listening from the other side, and I hear it when I'm talking to them. It's a different conversation than someone that I approach at a networking event. That's why referrals are so powerful. And these digital endorsements can serve in a similar fashion that those introductions, those referrals can. So third party conversations serve as free marketing that broadens reach and credibility. Now, building early momentum is important. If you get to a deal on one of these platforms, let's say it's a portal, Start Engine, WeFunder, have the most raised in any given year. Republic, Net Capital, Title III funds, uh, Looped, Microventures, a lot of other great platforms out there. Silicon Prairie. There's many. There's over 90 FINRA regulated portals, or even if you're publishing on your own and using a tech partner, a broker dealer, early investors and supporters can help to build credibility for your campaign. Obviously, the amount of investments that have been made and the amount of capital speak loudly. So if I get to a deal and there's $12,000 raised and it's a company in healthcare talking about how they're going to disrupt a vertical, may not be that believable. That same company with $2 million and $12,000 raised, I'm going to have a completely different perspective. So it's important to get that early traction, and not just from the physical results, but from these mentions, these endorsements. Uh, I may think differently about a campaign that's raised less. Let's say it's 112,000, and there's that extra digit. The optics definitely matter. Uh, but if they just went live and they were recently featured by, you know, TechCrunch, Entrepreneur, the Wall Street Journal, if they have major client logos featured, Pepsi, Marriott, Delta, I immediately am going to associate those brand values with the deal that I'm looking at. What are some other things that happen by building early momentum, Mark?
Sure. I mean, in a real sense, like that early momentum, all else being equal, is some of the most important you're going to see in the campaign because it is necessary for the momentum that is to follow it. Nobody should start at zero, right? If people walk in the door and they see a zero there, a lot of people are just going to turn around and walk out because they don't want to be the first. They don't want to be the first people to invest. So, you've got to start at a number that builds trust. And you mentioned things like the Pepsi logo. That's just another way of saying it's different from like a number, amount of money, but it's just another way of saying these people are trustworthy. These people are smart. They're doing well. They have great ideas. Just seeing that brand right up there, saying there are major players who the readers know have extremely intelligent people working for them, have evaluated these people and seen fit to work with them. That is conveying an enormous amount of information right there, which is why you've got to hit with things like logos, right at the top, right at the very start, logos of your partnerships, large amounts of money to make them look at it and go, wow, a lot of people are really seeing something here. You know, anything that you can do to get them to believe in you. And that's ultimately like, in some ways, some of these things are fungible. I couldn't tell you exactly how much the Pepsi logo is worth versus dollars already put into your account, but they're conveying the same information. And that's that these people are the real deal. And so you need to be, front loading your raise with information that is communicating that to the reader. Real deal, real deal, real deal, over and over. Hit them immediately when they get to your page with that information. So,
Create that initial buzz, establish that social proof, leverage
yep.
partnerships, those logos, build up advocates ongoing, through an ongoing fashion, receive organic feedback, use milestones for engagement, increase media attention, play for these things. Don't just let them happen accidentally. More early momentum, insights, highlighting testimonials, public support from early backers, signals that trustworthiness, creating a bandwagon crowd effect that encourages more people to invest. No one wants to be first, you said. Eric Cox in the panel last week at the CFPA in DC, fellow board member, said everyone wants to be first to be second. Eric Cox from Net Capital. I've also heard Jason Fishman, who has a very similar name to me, say that at Investment Week on a panel I was on last year with Jason, another industry thought leader. Early investors bring excitement and encourage others to see the initial traction and want to join, establish that social proof. Um, Partnerships in general, you know, you really want to show these, every other section of your offering page. That follows landing page theory and best practices. Landing pages, you're playing for an audience to do one thing. You're not taking them to your full site. So being able to show those partnerships, early supporters are often passionate advocates who can actually expand the campaign's reach by sharing it with their networks. So if you're not just putting the Pepsi logo, but if Pepsi's sharing it across their social pages much further, that's obviously high concept, but pick a player in your industry, pick a startup community in your neighborhood. It could go a long way. And partnerships with well-regarded companies or industry figures serve as endorsements, reassuring potential backers about the campaign's legitimacy and potential. Hey, if they're willing to talk about it, hey, if they're working with this company, hey, if they're speaking positively about them, there's got to be something going on there. And that doesn't happen accidentally. You want to build that foundation of advocates early on. What about actually generating the organic content and feedback?
Sure. I mean, you know, your early backers, it's great if you have a way to actually interact with them, to let them ask and answer questions. Things like, message areas, or indeed like webinars where you can go back and forth with them and, take their questions. And that can in turn generate the kind of organic content that you want to see, can get people talking about you. You want these backers to spread your name and your raise far and wide as much as possible. um, it adds legitimacy, and it also just gets more eyes on your page. That's what you want. It's more difficult to calculate how valuable an interaction with like a sort of average backer will be versus like really well-known investor, or industry partner or something like that. You don't know exactly what you're going to get from it individually, but collectively, if you keep doing it, you're going to see results. You're going to see, your name getting out there. And that's important because it sort of goes back to what we were just talking about. I mean, some of these things aren't just going to happen for you. You're not necessarily just going to have like Mark Cuban, pop down on your doorstep and start talking about how great your raise is. You need to make these things happen. You need to like make choices that will get your name out there, and to get work with like the kind of marketing that you need that will serve as the later foundation for these kind of social.
Absolutely. And start early, compliantly. There's different rules you need to follow and work with your legal partner, work with your portal or broker dealer around what you could say and when, um, pre-launch, during a test the waters stage, during the early stages, during the early chapters of your campaign. And remember, it's human nature. It's ingrained in us to not trust, out of our own protection, out of our own security. Um, Books like Sapiens would state that it's we're programmed this way, and through evolution, still have many of those instincts uh, within us. It states that you can play off it as a marketer in the sense that the more times we hear the same information from the more sources, more trusted sources, the more we believe it. But notice I said more, meaning it does not have to be Pepsi. It does not have to be Kim Kardashian. It does not have to be, the biggest influencers or publishers in the world. If you're sitting there thinking, hey, how am I going to get these people to talk about me, to talk about the offering, to talk about us? Uh, Fear not. It is also a strength in numbers type of concept. Mark, as you're saying, getting anyone to state, hey, I invested in this deal and here's why, and I'm excited about it, and you should be as well. It could be very impactful if you are then able to have someone State that monthly, weekly, daily, multiple times per day, different people, different retail investors. You could be in a very good place. I mean, hey, the average investment, as stated by Brian Blay at King's Crowd last week, is $1,440 on a Reg CF. I generally use the number 1,000. Portals, it's about $500 to $1,000 as the average investment. Self-publishing closer to 3,000. I think it's an average that brings in more of the self-publishing deals these days. But the numbers speak for themselves. You're going to need 1,000 investors to produce $1.44 million, even with the latest King's Crowd metrics. And King's Crowd shows the analytics for all regulated investment crowd funds. So to get 100 people of those 1,000 to say something, some platforms have review sections. Other platforms, other tech platforms, you're able to speak with the investors thereafter and can reach out and look for these types of quotes. It does not need to be, someone with millions of followers as much as someone who, is relatable and wants to speak about why your company, your shares are attractive.
Makes perfect sense. And I mean, another thing you can look at too is if you think about it in terms of needing a certain number of touch points before a successful conversion, um, surely you would want people organically spreading your message and therefore doing some of those touch points for you, right? Like as far and as wide as it can go, like that can, each one of them gets you a little bit closer to a potential investment.
Exactly. And increasing media attention, this can be done. This is approachable. This can be managed to a point of effectiveness. Early momentum can attract media coverage, creating a snowball effect that brings in further visibility and new investor interest. So we know, press releases are available. They may not get you investments, but they will go into syndication, and you then can showcase logos of publishers who have spoken about you. There are pitch events that you can enter, and different types of roadshow service providers, for lunch and learns, and various types of groups that want to cover issuers and groups that are running these campaigns. And then you can show, hey, we were just featured at this pitch competition, in this roadshow, we were just on this podcast. There's different service providers out there that'll guarantee you podcast coverage, and build a nice one sheet talking about your accomplishments and your talking points, and get you onto podcasts. There are a lot of things that could be done organically. You could pay service providers to produce for you organically. And there's, no shortage of paid placements. There's financial email newsletters that you can buy placements inside. You still have to be approved, but they want to sell that inventory. There are many types of sponsored content opportunities out there. You want to shoot for the organic ones. There's other types of paid placements that may be more performance oriented, but it's out there, and you can encourage early supporters. Focus on peer-to-peer efforts, make sharing easy and authentic. I want to point out another stat. Sherwood Woody Neese from Crowdfund Capital Advisors, not only an authority in the space among stats and analytics in this industry, but one of the creators of Title III of the Jobs Act, of Reg CF. Uh, Shared the story on my podcast about taking the bill from Congress, having it signed in the White House, sitting there with him. Obama signed this into effect in 2012, about 430 days, about a very rare period of time to be able to get something signed. He stated last week at the event, 80% of investments are from first and second degree contacts, meaning your first degree network and your network's network. So what can you do to get your network to invest? More importantly, what can you do to get your network to share? They can invest at any level. The minimums are $100 to $500 in most cases, just to back, to support, and then get some shares as part of the process. But to then share across their social media platforms, at their in-person engagements, meetings throughout the week, their friends, family, teams, golf buddies, what have you, and that grassroots social sharing effort was all that was needed for many campaigns to hit their full goal. And not just the issuers that had millions of customers, users, followers, but groups that were really able to stimulate this social sharing. You want to make sure to have clear calls to action, clear requests, uh, in emails, provide shareable templates to make it easy for them, perhaps, and openly ask for support to drive engagement. They say, different types of professions of sales reps, real estate as an example. Many of the unsuccessful real estate agents don't ask for the deal. Uh, Maybe they don't even need to in some markets, but the point is there. Ask for support to drive engagement. Don't be afraid of failing. Fear can be our biggest enemy as humans. And you'll be surprised who wants to talk about you and who can bring other investors, who could bring other publishers, other peer-to-peer marketers as a result.
I think that's absolutely right. And I want to, emphasize, the clear call to action is an easily forgotten but very important part of this whole strategy. I mean, it's not enough for you to say, I could use your help, and the other person to be thinking, well, I want to help. You got to tell them how, because if you don't immediately explain to them what they can do with that feeling, they will move on to the next thing, and it'll get buried in the back of their minds, and that'll just be it. But so a call to action might seem like obvious or simple, but it's actually neither of those things, and it's very important. People want to be not just asked for help, but told precisely how they can help and make it as easy as possible for them to help.
So, Mark, we have some examples of testimonials. Can you share why this matters and what we're seeing here?
Your sure.
Social security number is out on the internet. Your passwords have already likely
Are you
been
able to hear the
leaked, and
volume?
it's only a matter of time before your smart devices are hacked. This last one is because IoT data has some of the most lax security
So,
of all data. A California startup named Adam Dean is working around the clock to innovate.
Mark, who is this? Why do I care what they're saying? What does it mean to me as a cold audience member?
Right. Well, I mean, in this case, this is an influencer, um, who works in the and fintech space, and he has a following of people who are interested in these kinds of investments, and so when they tune in to see him talk and to talk about, in this case, Atom Beam and the things that it can do, you know, they're primed to get investment information. That is exactly what they're looking to get. So, in that respect, you have a well-respected figure in a community that is specifically looking to invest in the kind of businesses that you're raising for. You know, this is really valuable. I mean, and when talking about like real world experiences, I mean, that takes, a business or a service out of the abstract world and makes it into something concrete. They're like, oh, okay, I can see how that's a big deal. Talking about a huge recent data breach or something like that.
And user generated content, UGC, it's a term we hear a lot in the marketing world, startup ecosystem as a whole. It demonstrates real world experiences with potential investors to find relatable and impactful. So Kevin Fulmer, crowd scale, talking about Atom Beam. He can mention the deal in his email newsletter. to perspective to investors that are looking for more education and around this space. Kevin's invested in over 35 Reg CF deals based on his content. I imagine it's over 40 at this point. Analyst, expert in the space. So for him to point out a deal like Atom Beam, which is one of the top live Regulation A plus issuers right now, and they've run multiple successful, multi seven-figure Reg CF campaigns to date, it goes a long way, even on top of the amount of investments that they have. What about this example for Speedy Eats?
Change the world, and Speedy Eats is capitalizing upon that emerging trend by offering an automated answer to how to get hot food quick at all hours of the day.
What drove me to invest is I haven't seen anything around the area or in other states that has any type of fast delivery pizza system, and so I just really wanted to get behind that project.
Biggest challenge in our industry is labor, personnel, and people. And technology helps save labor. Speed really understands the struggles that restaurants have from a manpower and a labor perspective. So the technology to me was a no-brainer to not just support, but also to invest in.
Speedy's probably one of the best investors, CEOs I've ever partnered with.
So what were we seeing there, Mark? How is that different than the other example?
Sure. In the other example, or in this example, you're seeing like, the first gentleman, um, like, he's wearing a polo shirt for a different business, and he's talking about, what really appeals to him about Speedy Eats, and why it grabbed his attention. And so he seems to be sort of like more of a like man on the street kind of investor. So you're looking to sort of connect with that kind of person by looking at them and be like, oh, okay, he's a person like me, and he sees real potential here. And then you follow it up with what looks like more of like an industry professional, right? Someone who's experienced in the I think it was, did he say pizza space? um uh, and he talks about the challenges that it overcomes and how he sees Speedy Eats just solving all of those problems. So it's sort of hitting you from, on the one hand, you've got sort of like the everyman, like the yeoman's response. On the other hand, you've got like a professional speaking from experience. So you're getting these different perspectives that are connecting with you on different levels.
So on one hand, Adam Beam, Kevin Fulmer, hey, financial publisher talking about the deal,
Right.
then being used as an advertisement, by the way, to showcase that third-party validation. In the other, we're looking at industry professionals, investors, talking about why the technology matters, why the founder stands out to them, and why they invested. Goes a long way. Leveraging media mentions and endorsements, it's important to be consistent. Recent endorsements maintain relevance and impact. Displaying logos from media or investment funds signals due diligence and instills trust in the campaign's credibility. So this was part of a campaign for Boxable, and Boxable is one of the top issuers in the space to date, over 160 million raised. Meanwhile, they still show these publisher logos: NBC, CNN, Builder, Forbes, Yahoo Finance. They've featured Elon Musk, Post Malone, various individual and brand validators. They have to continue to do this to command trust from cold audiences, to demonstrate their authority. And immediately, I feel that everyone's talking about them and that they are primed for growth and doing something that is game changing. They have all the numbers to support it, but this is how far the logos go. And being able to talk about, how they're selling their casitas in these different states. The states then serve as social proof, and the customers in those markets speak loudly to me. What about the role of online communities and forums, Mark?
Sure. I mean, it's sort of a subtle thing, but a simple online posts and responding to messages, really makes the person feel like, okay, well, first of all, there's another person out there, you know, it makes it feel more real. But second, there's another person out there who responded to me. And there's like a real sort of em- mental or emotional connection. I almost want to say it's like a feeling of being like flattered. You think like this is, this CEO guy with this amazing idea and he's already raised like 1.2 million or something like that. And he's answering my questions directly. Like that kind of connection makes the person feel more real. It makes you feel sort of special. And that's going to go a long way toward, because we have there again, driving organic sharing. you know people who feel connected. It's like the example of Twitter. People are tremendously excited when they're on, or X I should say. People are tremendously excited when some major figure responds to them, or even so much as likes a post or comment that they make. It just makes them feel special, and it gets them out there. It turns like a normal kind of indifferent person into an advocate.
I like when public figures respond to a comment on their feed. I see it with different social pages I follow. A band that that just played their final tour, No Effects, announced it by responding to a follower that was asking when they're going to come to Canada, and they said, "Actually, we're going to play our last tour, and we're going there." And then that became the news headline, even though he was just responding to one
Yep.
person who was following their page. Uh, and I'm guilty of looking at comments. You're not supposed to, as a content creator. I don't always look at mine, in all fairness, but if I'm reading a news story, let's say on Instagram, I'll look at the comments, and this is the part I hate to say, they borderline shape my opinion on a topic in many scenarios. I'm able to see something that I agree with, and then read the comments and realize, oh, people are upset at this. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong. Uh, or the opposite. This seems a little quite. Does anyone really care about this announcement, this headline? And then I'll look at the comments and see the support. And there's people fighting, there's trolls, again, comments. It's a dark part of the internet, if you will. But when you see a community, when you see a forum that's very supportive on an investment, it says something. It does something mentally to at least add to your perspective. And as we could see here on this page, building trust and authenticity, establishing thought leadership, driving organic sharing is, commonly associated. Turning customers into advocates is a topic I've spoken about regularly. I've written articles around the premium audience in investor crowdfunding being user owners, and funnels that start with your customer base, your user base, your clientele, that then take them into the investment opportunity and then back to your products. Also, funnels that start with the investment and then create these investomers is a term used often in the industry. Uh, they can become super users of your product, ambassadors at that. And those are notes I hear directly from founders. Existing customers and early investors are usually the most enthusiastic advocates. Inviting them to share experiences can turn their positive sentiments into sustained advocacy. Quote testimonials, video reviews, reasons why to join. Here is a MagFast customer talking about how much they love MagFast. And MagFast, they have a CEO, Seymour, who is amazing. he creates this content and showcases different testimonials like this all through an hour and a half long webinar, and very animated, very excited. And it's amazing. Something as simple as a charging cord gets people so incredibly excited. It's contagious. And investing in the company has a similar type of dynamic around it. And that's why they've brought in, thousands of investors, well over 7, I believe 9 million at this point in capital, because of the campaigns that they run, showcasing this social proof and really putting on a pedestal the excitement that the audience has around the organization. Now, authenticity is key in influencer marketing. And influencers, it's a term we hear thrown around a lot. We've looked at some different examples of what an influencer can be, that there's nano influencers, micro influencers, nanos under 10,000 followers, micro under 100, under 10,000, micros under 100,000. Does not have to be, the multi-million follower accounts. What can you say about influencers, Mark?
Well, I mean, it shouldn't surprise anybody that influencers can be, potentially a huge deal. In fact, I mean, in many ways, when we talk about influencers, we're really just talking about the same benefits people would get, like, from celebrities, but with perhaps one important difference. It's that an influencer who is well known for being a figure in their community will seem authentic in their support for something in a way that a celebrity may not be. So if De Niro does a commercial for Dunkin' Donuts, um, you're not really walking out of there and thinking like, oh, okay, he really loves Dunkin' Donuts. He thinks this is the best donut. But if like the Donut King, like an influencer with like, 300 million followers worldwide, who has built his brand around his love of donuts and made like, 900 separate videos, reviewing donut shops, comes in and is like, this is the best donut shop in the Northeast United States. You know, people
Goes a
are
long
going
way.
to suddenly be beating down that place's door. And the difference is because of authenticity. They believe in them.
If my wife's reading about it on Citizen or Nextdoor or one of these community apps, and it's about a local business, very targeted. Proximity has a power to it, which can be said about publishers, influencers, any third parties talking about you. But if there's many people talking about a new restaurant in a good way or in a bad way, that will likely impact our decisions. And influencer marketing, there's so many tips we could speak to, but selecting influencers with aligned values. Ensure influencers have values and audience demographics that align with your campaign. This improves the authenticity of their endorsements and strengthens connections with potential investors. There's many great examples of faith-based campaigns out there. We're working with some right now, and it's important that they select the right influencers with the right values to speak to their audiences in a very authentic way to be able to drive new prospects to the deal. Transparency, big deal. Encouraging influencers to disclose paid partnerships openly boosts credibility with their audience, reinforcing trust in both the influencer and the campaign. Do not think this is going to make a post, a piece of content ineffective, as much as being honest and transparent in your approach, in your communications. I'll see an ad, and even look at the fact that they're running an ad as a validator, because I know how hard it is to get some verticals approved for advertising. So if I see something in the psychedelics industry, cannabis, and there's ads running, oh wow, this is a legitimate company. If I see a paid influencer post, I know, hey, they still had to go through a process, get approved. The influencer likes what they're doing. They're just being, by the book and following all the rules around this. What's another tip, Mark?
Yep, so good. So, building long-term partnerships. Well, of course, I mean, if you've got a raise and you can build some kind of, ongoing trust between a major influencer who plays a key role in the online community that you're serving, you absolutely should do so. And and it can be symbiotic. You help them and they help you. I mean, there's a reason people send out products or give special access to influencers all the time, in exchange for their candid reviews upon them. And you want to build on that, so that because every time your name slips out of their lips, bam, that's getting more eyes on your page. Like, over and over again, it's going to work for you again and again. And it's going to be work for you with the people who are most passionate about your industry. And those are some of the most likely people to invest in it.
So we're getting down to the last few pages here. I want to get a few points in pretty quick, but basically, there are many channels to distribute this third party promotion beyond just social media. Definitely social media advertising, by the way. But you want to leverage your channels, newsletters, email drips, press releases first. Paid placements with trusted logos can further boost visibility, showing consistent engagement across channels. You want to implement this into your offering page, your landing page, into as many places as you can that you're going to be driving audiences. If you're going to drive 100,000 visits to maybe raise $2.8 million, it's a 2% conversion rate, 2,000 investments at that 1.44 average investment level. You want to make sure that it's a overwhelming feeling of social proof. And yes, you want to get these content distribution partners, these third-party validators to get the info, the recommendation in front of their audience. But you wouldn't believe how many times I've seen blank offering pages or content that doesn't talk about all the great mentions that have occurred for an issuer. We'll work with some of the top issuers for the first time, and they have years of marketing history and very little that's mentioned on their deal page, on some of their content channels. So make sure you're referencing that, and across your email newsletters and drip campaigns. Uh, Past placements every week, there should feel like a new placement. There's so much that can be done with email, which is still looked at as a top form for digital communication. Mark, you work on a lot of press releases. What do you want to add about this type of, we'll call it traditional distribution?
Sure. I mean, the key there is impartiality and professionalism. With a good press release, you're trying to accomplish something sort of analogous to social proof, by keeping, like, a sort of objective, sort of sounding nature to your prose, to make them feel as if they're just hearing about it or reading about it in a newspaper or something like that. So, you're not going to be like filled up with marketing puffery or anything like that. You're just going to talk about your product in a measure, or your company in a measured way, describing what they do, keeping things positive, but with, like, sort of an impartiality and objectivity spin toward it, as opposed to, like, a really excited, like, animated spin toward it. Ideally, like, you want the excited animation to come from those third parties, right? When you're talking about it yourself, you're sort of like you're just giving the facts and letting them judge.
Industry blogs and guest articles, partner with writers, publishers in your space to get your content out. Again, it means more if they say it. Uh, if they have a large, loyal, responsive following of their own, even better. But there is a numbers game to this as well, where if you just have one placement here and one placement there versus one every week, it's a different sensation in the eyes of a prospective investor. This can enhance reach with relevant niches and generate organic interest in its own and adds to your story all the way through. Mark, what about webinars?
Well, webinars are pretty great for a whole bunch of reasons. Um, I absolutely recommend webinars. First of all, I mean, they got to get you out there, seeing your face, hearing you talk about your raise. They get to see your energy, see, the passion that you have behind it. That nobody is going to be able to make a better case for, why your business or service is going to succeed than you, because you've thought about it so much and you can talk about your ideas, your plans, your strategies, and them seeing all of that means that they connect with you, like they're both reassured that you're trustworthy. There's some of your energy gets spread to them, and they in turn want to like start looking into your raise or talking to other people about it. Also, just from a sheer marketing perspective, like, you can slice up that webinar and you can use like, key moments for, part of your advertising strategy. So, I mean, it's just great for so many different things. And if you can have someone else, like, and as it says here, an investor or an industry expert or some kind of influencer, on board, then you're further leveraging social proof in another way by having them happily join you in a discussion about what you're doing. So really just webinars are just tremendously helpful.
We're obviously big fans of it. Hosting this
Right.
webinar right here. Was lucky enough to get Mark to put some time in the calendar, serving as our authoritative influencer in our presentation here. And it's true, these podcasts that I've been seeing over the past month with presidential candidates and other types of politicians running for office are seeing more views than they ever have, and being looked at as these, concrete media sources at that. The level of your guest can have a, positive light spotlighted on your content channels, your offerings, your initiatives, your company, your investments. So you want as many people talking about the campaign as possible. And the larger they are, the more of an audience they have, the better. This is present on the top campaigns. Don't just take our word for it. Go on to King's Crowd, go on to Crowdfund Capital Advisors, look at the top deals in the space. We've come to our time here. So please forward any questions over to us via our site. Look up Mark Laufgraben on LinkedIn. Look up me on LinkedIn. We welcome a warm marketing conversation anytime, and want to thank you for tuning in today. We're looking forward to the November webinar. Mark, any parting words for the audience?
No, I mean, if you've got social proof, just be sure to leverage it. That's not the last thing. It's sort of like otherwise it's like convincing someone to vote for you, but not actually getting out the vote. So social proof is critical, but it needs to be used. And if you're looking to figure out how you could use it, I'm sure we could be of service to you. So
Social proof is only as good as what you do with it.
that's right.
I was talking about a campaign earlier for Rayton Solar, the first Regulation A Plus campaign that we worked on in January of 2017, and Bill Nye the Science Guy was featured in it. Bill posted a couple times throughout the course of the campaign, and there was a spike of investments for about 24 hours. Meanwhile, uh, his pitch video was used for all site visitors, the offering page, and we used clips of that video and advertisements for over 12 months, including the pre-launch campaign. It produced millions, tracked by the advertising pixel itself, where if it was limited just to that organic post, would have been a minuscule amount of capital in comparison to what was produced at the end of the day. Still valuable, but you get the contrast. So couldn't echo that loud enough for you, Mark. This has been such a pleasure to walk through these recommendations with you. And eh, for anyone tuning in, if you haven't sent Mark an invitation yet on LinkedIn, what are you waiting for? Mark, thanks again. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will see everybody next month.